Kristof Morrow, man, you've got a hell of a story, brother. You, U.S. Navy veteran, and you've written two books, and you've got Tourette's, man. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Shakespeare. Yep. Well, there it goes. That's it. Shakespeare. Um, I was diagnosed, which is really out of the ordinary. I was diagnosed when I was 27. Generally, you're diagnosed when you're a kid,
Right.
very young. Before the age of 18 is what the DSM-5. Um, yeah, the guidelines in that sense are. Uh, but yeah, I didn't. It didn't manifest until I was like 19 and when I was in the Navy.
No
Mhm.
kidding. So you had
Sh-
no
sh-
you had no symptoms prior to being 19, or you just
Nope.
symptoms didn't notice?
No, I did Shakespeare. I didn't have them at all.
No kidding. So did any kind of traumatic brain injury happen, or anything like that, or just one day you
No,
just started
sh-
ticks?
Shakespeare. I did a Shakespeare. I did a PTSD, and I stopped sleeping for a long time. Uh, I was so afraid of Shakespeare of not showing up to work on time because in the military that's quite serious. Yeah, they are averse to that. They don't like that at all. So they when I had my first, it was so uh serious. It was like a seizure. The first three I had during that period, and I was in the ICU, and I had a couple of them. They didn't know what was going on. They had no idea, but they told me I wasn't deployable anymore. I was a Navy corpsman, so that's a medic that generally gets serves with Marines.
So how many years total did you serve?
About a year and a half, actually.
Oh man, that's so. Did it hurt your feelings when they told you you couldn't serve anymore?
Yeah, I was pretty bummed, but also I realized that uh, military life is quite grim. I lost a friend shortly after uh, my seizures, or my first manifestation of Tourette's, rather, uh, to suicide. And he was a guy I worked with every day. I knew his wife. I've been to his house. I helped him fix his internet at one point. I knew him really well. And, I was my desk was like 2-3 feet away from his every day. Um, yeah, that was and the way and the manner in which I found out was really awful. Actually, um, I had a the duty driver just told me one morning. He said like the night after it happened, because apparently what happened, he um he ended his life uh, with a gun, and the SWAT team was called, and they had the whole. They were waiting outside the house for hours before they went in, and it was awful. It was awful because the next morning, I didn't know any of this. Next morning, I'm going to the hospital to go do my work, and they said, uh, do you know this guy? And I was like, yeah, that's my LPO. Which means it's my boss, basically. And he's like, yeah, he ended his life last night.
Oh man.
And yeah, it was just like, oh well, I had a panic attack immediately. I had no idea if anyone knew, but I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, that had to be such a surreal feeling to find out that way,
Yeah.
and you say you had a panic attack, man. Just to get a little loose in this conversation, I had a panic attack, my first panic attack. Gosh, it's been about a year now. Um,
Hmm.
but it was very severe. I felt like I was dying. I felt like
Yeah.
I was having a heart attack,
Hmm.
and it was very serious to me. But um, then I realized, like, hey, I think I'm panicking, and that feeling combined with that news, man, that had to be terrible. Um,
Yeah.
and were your symptoms of Tourette's popping up at that time?
It was right before that. In fact, um, I didn't really have it was very episodic at first. Tourette's started, uh, then I was in the ICU for a while, and then I got out, and then I was working in hospital supply for a time, and no longer working with patients because I couldn't. And, I didn't have another episode until I was, like, 21 or 22 years old, and then I had another one at 24, and then when I was 25, I started having very reliable manifestation. It was chronic and very noticeable to even other people. Um, yeah,
What's it like for you? Like, hold on a minute. Like, how old are you first?
I'm 35.
You're 35. No, so I'm 39. Um, is it difficult for you? Does it hurt your feelings, or does it piss you off? Does it get aggravating when you start having tics? Because, like, as somebody from the outside looking in, I don't have Tourette's, but I can
Mhm.
obviously identify your tics and stuff like that. It doesn't bother me, and but I do know that I've heard several people with Tourette's say it's embarrassing, or
Yeah.
it's hard to make friends. Does that bother you at all?
It depends on the circumstance whether or not my Tourette's bothers me. I have a girlfriend and she helps me. So, like she'll prevent me from hitting myself because I hit myself in the face a lot. Um, and I punch myself in the throat. Uh, I yell a lot. I hit my
Is it ever
hand so
fun?
much.
And is it ever fun out in public though?
It depends. I don't really. I can't think of a circumstance in which it was fun in public. Uh, it's been more of a liability
Right,
than more
right.
fun. Like just because I'm a cat, Shakespeare. Um, I had a like for example, it was Christmas Eve. I was living in Canada. This is a couple of years ago, and I was waiting in line at the self checkout, and the guy behind me points at a closed station, and he says, "Oh yeah, you can go to that one." I was like, "Oh no, you can't. It's closed." So then I turned back around and I yelled the F word, and then I yelled the C word, and he thought I was, of course, calling him those things. So I turned around. I was like, "No, no, no. I have Tourette's." I was with my ex at the time. She's like, "No, no, he really does. He has Tourette's." And the guy was like, "Oh," he went from like being enraged to like being like
Oh, I'm so
ghostly
sorry.
pale.
Embarrassed.
Yeah, yeah, he's embarrassed. Of course, what are the odds? You know,
Right.
Everybody was on edge because it's Christmas Eve and they're at the grocery store. So these people, everyone there is a poor planner. Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone who's at the grocery store on Christmas Eve has done a poor job preparing for Christmas. And so we're all freaking out. So naturally, it's natural to assume that I was being
Right.
vulgar and rude.
Yeah, I my best friend has Tourette's, and I
Oh,
say
really?
he's yeah, it's pretty fun. It's not as pronounced as yours. It's pretty
Talk-
fun to sit and have a conversation with him and know, like, he beats his head back and forth like this, and he stomps his feet and stuff, and it's like he's got his own song playing in his head. And he says, he told me one time, he's like, that's actually how I concentrate on not ticking, is because I do
Mhm.
play my own little soundtrack in my head, and it keeps me concentrated on the song instead of the ticks. And it's, but I had no idea he had Tourette's syndrome, and I was making fun of him one day. I was like, "Man, what'd you do? Just do a bunch of drugs or something?" Because his face was, you know, doing that kind of thing, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on with you? He's like, man, I actually have Tourette's. And I was like, no, you don't. You're so full of shit. And he's like, no, for real, I do. And then his wife was talking to me. She's like, no, really, he does. So, and he's an army veteran, so he had to mask his symptoms while he was in the army. And it's a very similar story to yours. At first, um, I had thought that you had made it through, the Navy with your symptoms, but like they told you you couldn't serve anymore, and That
Yeah.
must have been difficult to handle at that time. And I also deal with so my wife wakes me up every morning. I don't have an alarm clock.
Well, they get.
And
Go ahead. Sorry.
I also worry about not waking up on time for whatever. I can't take naps while my kids are at school because one time I laid down to take a nap and I didn't wake up to go get my kids, and I got a phone call at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Oh boy.
saying, "Hey, yeah, you missed pickup time." And ever since then, I can lay down for like 2, 3 hours and not fall asleep because I'm afraid I won't wake up.
That's crazy. That's nerve wracking. Yeah, I can imagine that. It's traumatic. Being, yeah, uh, messing up on that responsibility. It's akin to what I was going through, essentially. Except I was afraid to go to jail. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not that
Shakespeare.
serious for me. So, yeah, you could end up in the brig if you're late for work.
Yeah. Mhm.
That sucks. So, tell me about your books, man. You've written 2 books so far, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
tell
I've
me
written
about those books.
well, I've hit number 1 in a couple of categories on Amazon a few times. Yeah. My first 2 books are novels. My second is a sequel to the first. Uh, it's called The Second Son, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and 1 and 2 are combined in the first book. So, uh, it's an epic fantasy, and I explore like a lot of stuff actually. Climate change. There's which is I know it's just quite curious, right? And a lot of people. Yeah, there's war. There's slavery. There's knights. There's different nations. It's civil war even. But yeah, it's I've sold about like 1,700 copies, so it's been pretty good. Relative,
Wow,
yeah.
that is nice. So, so in the Second Son, Volume 1 and 2, is it a compilation of stories, or is it one story and then there's a break and then the second story?
It's 3 story. You ever seen Game of Thrones?
Yes.
You know how they did the first episode was with uh, you know, Ned Stark and all those guys. The second episode is about I think it's Tyrion and them, and
Yeah.
what he's got going on. And the third episode is it follows Daenerys Targaryen. Well, my book is some of the first 3 chapters are 3 different stories, see 3 separate stories, and they alternate throughout the book,
Okay.
and you find out how they're connected as the story goes on. Um,
Wow, that actually sounds really interesting. So volume 1 is kind of like starting the story. Then volume 2 is moving into a different story, but a part of the first story.
it's
Volume
just a it's a quick there's really no difference. The distinction is only that lies in the fact that I wanted to give away volume 1 for free and then
Okay.
charge for volume 2 so that people know that I've written something worthwhile if they wanted to actually read it. But Amazon didn't let me do that, so I just combined them into one book. So there's really no difference. Like the stories, it's still a continuation of all the stories from volume 1. So
Okay, so it's kind of like a movie, part one,
yeah,
part two. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it also makes sense in volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. I just for whatever reason I wasn't putting that together in my head, but it makes sense now.
I'm a
Um,
cat.
are you? that, I am so sorry. That that was funny to me. I'm you when you said I'm a cat. I've got cats in the room with me.
Yeah. Yeah. How old is your cat?
I've got so one of them is 10 months. No, 11 months, and
Mhm.
the other is 3 months. And so they're just kittens. But
Uh,
so what is the second son? You told me it's got a little bit of all kinds of themes. What is the underlying theme? Is it about one specific person or a period of time, or
it's probably I would say that it's about 16th, 17th century medieval, like in terms of like technologically where the world is at. There's very little magic because I think it's unruly. Magic can be quite unruly. So, um, I suppose the underlying theme is how complex natural systems are connected and how we connect with them. And there is a paradise within the book, which is meant to where when you die, you can bury yourself with the seed of whatever plant or a tree you want to become, and you come to life as that tree or that whatever. And it's supposed to it's that is whole meant to be an allegory for the notion of people retiring. You know, like the older generations now are insulated. They live in a kind of financial paradise relative to what everyone else is going through. You know, with trying to buy a home and trying to have afford having children in the first place. Just a number of like qualities of our life that are so different from our parents. And so the book is the fact that there is a paradise is meant to describe that relationship and how they're insulated. Uh, but otherwise, everyone else lives in a Game of Thrones type world. There's no dragons, but there's other monsters, but no dragons. So and it's really quite it can be quite violent, but it's not as violent as Game of Thrones, and that's by design. Uh, that's really
That's awesome.
man,
That is
yeah.
really, really awesome. It sounds like a really good book to get into. Um, how difficult was it to write these books with Tourette's?
Oh, you know, uh, having Tourette's helped me connect with other people that have disabilities, uh, and it allowed me. It gave me a perspective that I didn't have before, uh, and so in that sense, it informed a lot of like my characters and their experiences with, dealing with people that, like with other characters who look at this person. Like I have a character who has cerebral palsy, and at one point there's he becomes an alcoholic, and he's very limited in how he can get to it, but they don't want to stop him because they feel like that's what I'm saying, because that's like stealing his agency in a
Right.
sense, like yeah, and like treating him like infantilizing him. And it's really curious and morally yeah, it's hard to nail down exactly what truth is right, and what perspective is right. Um, and that's also by design. So Tourette's really just allowed me to understand like what I was doing in that sense and how I could better represent other people with other kinds of conditions.
So as you're writing
Hmm.
and putting your thoughts out on paper,
Hmm.
does concentrating on writing and having your imagination going at the same time, does that help with the ticks? Does that help to make like
Yeah.
them less frequent?
Yeah, absolutely. I have very few ticks while I'm working. Um, I I am absorbed completely in my work. It's very thoughtful and deliberate. Every word is chosen with care, um, and is meant to describe not only the logical understanding of what's going on, but the spirit of it too. The spirit of what I mean is also a relevant part. And so having all of those things in my head at once really allow me to escape uh, my tics. It's because I have them even while I have them while I'm driving. But to give you like some idea, it only really happens when I'm at a stoplight or at a stop sign. When I'm not moving, I have tics. But when I'm actually driving, I have very few.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's something else to concentrate on, just moving through traffic and stuff like that. It does make sense. So as you're writing books and
Mhm.
having, having that time to work, your imagination, what do you do for fun while you're writing books? Like, do you immerse yourself in that world and don't come out until you're done, or is it a long process, or
Mm.
do you work a certain part of the day and then go have fun or do whatever and then come back the next day? How's that work for you?
So I usually do about 1,000 words a day, and it really happens when it happens. Sometimes I do it late at night, and other times I get straight to it right in the morning. Hemingway said that you stop writing whenever you know what's going to happen next. And in that sense, that's a really helpful strategy because then you can start the next day and like something my girlfriend said yesterday was inertia is a powerful thing. Uh, and it's really funny because it really does. You know, like if you can get moving, you can keep going. So having that boon from the get go every day, yeah. And so yeah, I just get started when I can. Mm. And
That's
what I do for fun? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the second half of the question.
oh, you're fine.
Um, yeah, I play a lot of video games. Uh, like Final Fantasy, uh, World of Warcraft. Just I have hundreds of games, honestly. But I
I
generally
imagine
play
that
video
helps
games.
with the ticks too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, generally I don't have very many ticks when I'm playing
Unless you get really
games.
pissed off and you get to a part in the video game where you can't get past. I imagine that's frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't have I'm yeah, I'm not very symptomatic when but everything I do is meant to in some way inform or uh help to re-energize me for my work the following day. Like and yeah, so it's very I try to do stuff that helps me relax and because it's very taxing to write as seriously as I do it.
I bet it is taxing. I've got severe ADHD, and
Hmm.
man, just getting motivated to really do anything um, first thing in the morning is really difficult for me, and I have to have like an hour or two to kind of process what I'm supposed to do that day and kind of think of a plan on how to do it and then go and
Hmm.
do it. But I usually have an hour or two first thing in the morning that I can actually do that because I've got young kids and everybody has to go to school and work, and I'm a stay-at-home dad. And but there are some days where I just cannot get motivated because of all being overwhelmed and overstimulated and stuff. And
Hmm.
I should like my kids ruin video games for me, but I should actually get into stuff like that to just help but take my mind off of things. One
Hmm.
thing I've really been doing lately is I've been playing music a lot because I'm used to waking up and my whole day is podcasting. I
Oh wow.
I watch podcasts, I listen to podcasts, I hang out with other podcasters, I talk with other podcasters. So
Hmm.
I really, really love podcasts and I really, really love learning. But it had come to my attention that maybe one of the reasons why I can't focus while I'm trying to work is because I'm listening to other people speak and I'm trying to listen and also focus my attention on other things simultaneously.
Hmm.
And I'm not a very good multitasker. I can multitask
Hmm.
as long as I don't have to actively listen. But yeah, I found that music really, really helps me in kind of decompressing. And it also allows me to not have to
Hmm.
think about the music that's playing and just work. And I don't know why I do that, but it's helpful. And my wife kind of really you
Fuck.
know, actually, I was on the
Shakespeare.
podcast talking to my wife as I'm thinking about this stuff, and I'm like, hey, maybe I should play music. And I started doing that, and it started helping. And it's been an incredible journey over the last few weeks with just playing music instead of something that I have to listen to. Um,
Hmm.
but I also wanted to talk to you about coming across some of your information here. You talk a little bit about being in the Navy and also a little bit about your childhood.
Oh yeah.
Um, what was your childhood like? I see like I
Mm.
have information here in front of me, and I don't want to without leading too much of the conversation or whatever. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was full of violence and terror. Uh, yeah, and an extraordinary amount of abuse. Um, yeah, I had no dignity or self-worth as a kid. Um, I didn't even know. I I, I honestly didn't understand uh, that love was a was a true and serious and worthwhile thing. Because both of my parents are very, 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 very deeply flawed people, battling addiction in one way or another. Actually, which is similar to me. That's what I'm an alcoholic, and I haven't had a drink in like 8 years, I think. Um,
Congratulations.
thanks. Yeah, actually, about eight. It's actually 8 years now. Um, and so uh, for me, it was I was the oldest boy, so I got it. I probably got 90% of the abuse growing up, and it was awful. It was awful, truly. Yeah.
Do you have a relationship with your parents now?
I don't actually. No.
How about your siblings? Do you have a relationship with your siblings?
Fuck. Shh, 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 shh. I do have a relationship with my brother. Uh but my sisters are both well what they're quite aloof in their own way. Um but they have families of their own, and they're doing their own thing, and they're older than me. I was the third born, so three out of four. Yeah. So I haven't spoken to them in quite some time,
Man,
actually.
that sucks, brother. I
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of four myself, and my siblings and I are really really close. Um, I have a great relationship with all of them. They don't have necessarily the greatest relationship with each other, but
Yeah.
I have a great relationship with all of them. And as the youngest, I was sheltered, and my siblings hid a lot of stuff from me, the abuse that went on with them. And
Oh,
as
wow.
a child, I was never abused. I did like my parents did have a heavy hand when disciplining me, but it was hard at that time to call it abuse because I was actually being disciplined. I should have been disciplined when they were disciplining me.
Yeah.
However, you know, little kids don't, need weapons used on them. Like you didn't need to use a belt and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
My Shakespeare, go ahead. Sorry.
my siblings did protect me from a lot of that stuff though, and I do have a relationship with my mom passed on almost 10 years ago now,
Oh,
but
wow.
we have a pretty decent relationship, the whole family, and there was a lot of abuse there. It just never happened to me. um but that's
Category.
very interesting. That Do you think that the physical abuse that you went through has anything to do with your Tourette's?
You know what? Yeah. I think that it's part of it. It's certainly part of it. Um, but I think uh, my time in the Navy was pretty intense also in that sense. But for as a kid, in fact, most people develop Tourette's uh, in an abusive environment. I don't want to say all kids with Tourette's, obviously, because that would not describe uh, that would not describe it in total and truth. Like it's because not everyone that has Tourette's comes from a violent home. Uh, but the ones that I've seen, a lot of them, is very evident um, that they're suffering from abuse. So yeah. Mm.
I don't know anything about Tourette's, but I'm just wondering if is there any correlation between Tourette's and maybe anxiety?
I think that different symptoms of Tourette's uh, I like to say that they flirt with one another. Anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive disorder and how did I say major depression? Depression. Uh, yeah. So I mean, uh, a lot of the main ones: anxiety, depression, OCD, and ADHD. Actually, is another one. I suffer from that as well. But it's quite disabling. Um, but yeah, I do think that there is. I think that there's a relationship worth explore. I think that it's worth exploring if it isn't already.
Yeah,
So,
because as you're speaking to me, like it's I, the correlation between abuse and Tourette's and um, TBI and Tourette's. It's just
mhm.
thinking out loud. I'm like, man, I wonder if th- there is a correlation between Tourette's and anxiety, because like anxiety is very heavy, man. And a
Yeah,
lot of people, like, there's the good anxiety, and then there's also the bad anxiety, and
yeah.
anxiety in itself is crippling sometimes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I use the expression like my brain short circuits or misfires. I use that expression with my kids all the time. And I'm like, you know how when you're doing this thing and something happens and your brain just short circuits? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's happening to me right now. I need you to leave me alone. And
Mhm.
so that's I really explain to them in that way, like as things are happening to me, I'm feeling anxious, get away from me. You're irritating the piss out of me, I need you to go away. Stuff like that. And it's not that I'm trying to be mean, I'm trying to explain to them in an honest way what's going on with me, so they don't see dad freaking out, and there's no explanation for it. And that's a lot of the times when I was a kid, that was what I could have used the most, is just people being honest with me about what's going on. And my mom, acting like she's irritated because I'm speaking to her. Well, it's not that she's irritated because I'm speaking with her. It's just that she just got done with a 12-hour shift and I'm not the only kid in the house and everybody's screaming and yelling and it's chaos. And mom's a person too. And it took me a,
Absolutely. Yeah.
a long time to understand that. And so, in dealing with that stuff myself and knowing how I felt as I'm going through all that, it really helps me to maintain and keep that relationship with my children, even though I'm anxious, even though I'm aggravated or irritated. I may be screaming at the top of my lungs or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
honest with them and being like, listen, I know you don't understand right now, but this is why this is happening. I'm not angry. I'm irritated. I'm anxious, stuff like that. And this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation, Kristof. I really don't know anything about Tourette's, and to speak with somebody as open as open as yourself about Tourette's, I'm incredibly thankful for that. Um, so we had talked before about the book, and you said you could find it on Amazon.
Mhm.
Do you have a website for your book?
Yeah, it's KristoffMorrow.com.
That's what's up. I need my own website.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It does offer a feeling of legitimacy for yourself. It's kinda like smelling good, like putting on cologne to go to a Zoom meeting. Like, it doesn't they won't know, but you have that assurance in your head. And it's weirdly comforting and encouraging.
Yeah, right now I am fully dressed, and there are some times where I show up in my pajamas. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It is like um seeing my podcast on YouTube and seeing my face and my logo and stuff. Usually I have my logo up behind me on the TV, but for whatever reason I just didn't do that today. But seeing my face on my podcast is seeing like it is you're right. It's awesome to see that stuff, and not only it is very fulfilling, and
Mhm.
I can't even describe into words what it makes me feel. Pride, it makes me feel Like I could equate it to when somebody is talking about my hometown on television, or they mention my hometown on a movie, and I'm like, hey, that's I'm from that place, and it makes me feel good. But yeah,
Mhm.
I totally get what you're saying, and it does give you a sense of legitimacy, and like this is real. We're doing this, and man, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you for what you've been able to accomplish in the last few years, as and since your exodus from the military. Um, that's pretty wild to have all that stuff and be as self aware as you are. That's very. Um, you're 35, I'm 39. That's very odd for people our age to be that self aware. And you must have spent a lot of time in your head thinking about all that stuff, huh?
Yeah, no, I think yeah, because I was quite insecure. You know, I was bullied a lot, and I always try to refine whatever iteration of personality of me that occurred that day, and whatever failures manifested because of it, I would refine and look inward and try to understand, like, how could I be more likable tomorrow? And so, and that made me by exploring myself, I explored really a lot of human nature, the habits, the nature and habits of people. And as a journalist, actually, I did the same. Yeah, I forgot. I
Pe-
didn't even mention that. Yeah, I worked as a
people
reporter, though.
people are fascinating. Like people
Yeah.
really, that's really honestly one of the biggest reasons. And now I say all the time when people ask about the podcast, well, one of the biggest reasons is there's all kinds of reasons why I do this, but people is one of the biggest reasons. I'm lonely in my life. And it's not because I'm alone. It's because my wife works a lot, and I'm a stay-at-home dad, and my kids are all in school or graduated now. So there's a good
Yeah.
6 hours of every day that I don't know what to do with myself unless I'm busy. And um, I forgot where I was going with that. So that's that
I can actually
ADHD.
sympathize. I can sympathize with that, actually. My Shakespeare, my girl, I'm a disabled veteran, and I don't Shakespeare because of my condition and the way that's all this stuff. I don't have to work a job. I have a pension from the military that will last for the rest of my life. But my girlfriend, she works as a neuroscientist, at the NIH. So she's working constantly and studying and stuff for her, like, for because she wants to do something really quite serious. She wants to be a physician, um, and so she's going to be gone a lot. So I totally, and I'm going to be a stay at home, whatever the hell, if that's where it ends up, that's quite, it's funny. I know exactly how you feel. I do.
I try to I tell people all the time when they ask, is like podcasting is kind of lonely. I do talk to a lot of people. First thing when I wake up in the morning, I've got like 6 7 emails to respond to, 20 text
Hmm.
messages. I talk to probably 25 people a day, and
Oh
that's
wow,
outside of my house. And so I do talk to people, but man, I do sit in my head a lot,
you
and
don't
and it
connect with
sucks.
people. You talk to people,
Right.
but without connecting. Yeah,
That's right.
I'm
That's right.
sorry. Yeah,
When we're on the podcast, when we're in a conversation like this one, I'm connecting with you,
that's connecting.
and
Yeah.
and I am connecting with most of my guests that come on. There's only been like two guests that I didn't have any connection with, but um
I
it
can
it
see
is
that.
it is
Yeah,
very.
yeah.
Go ahead.
You're great at what you do, is what I was gonna say.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
yeah.
try. But I self-medicate too. I smoke cannabis. And
Mhm.
so there's the last interview I did actually was with a drug counselor. And for whatever reason, I'm sitting here just freezing and not coming up with intelligent questions or asking the right questions. And
I'm a fan.
it was a very weird interview, but it was fun. But yeah, I when I tell people that, like, it's kind of lonely, like you get it, you understand, because like you're going through it right now.
Mhm.
And but they're like, what do you mean? You talk to like 50 people a day, and how is that lonely? And I'm like, man, I'm in my head all the time. Literally, my friends live in my phone, and it's
Hmm.
very lonely. But that's very interesting. That I tell you what, one of the cool things that I get to do um, when nobody else is around, I get to go to lunch by myself sometimes. Yeah, you ever go hang out like at a pizza joint by yourself, or like go play video games at an arcade or anything like that by yourself?
Mm, um, I don't. I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't. I spend a lot of my time working. And if I'm not working, then I'm trying to relax and uh, but I'm getting out more and I'm spending more time socializing because you know. So, but I don't go I don't go by myself places because I have Tourette's. It's a little bit more difficult for me to explain by myself.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
no
I would
Shakespeare.
I'd actually wear a shirt sometimes like I have Tourette's.
I do.
That's what
Yeah, I
I
have shirts. Yeah.
that's what I would do because I do have to explain, or I feel the need to explain. My 5-year-old's got autism, and I do sometimes feel the need to explain to people, oh, he's autistic, and because he says wild stuff, or when we're in the grocery store, he'll see for a lack of a better term, he'll see a fat lady, and he'll say, "Oh,
I'm a cat.
she's got a baby in her tummy," and I'm like, "Oh, I apologize. He has autism, and just casually speaking to my wife, sometimes I'm like, we should probably get him a shirt that says, I have a touch of the tism or something like that, just kind of bring some humor and some levity into the
Yeah.
situation. Because sometimes people don't know what to say when you say, oh, he's got autism, but like he's 5, and we treat it like it's normal, like because it is, he's normal. It's fun, and it's just part of life now that these are some of the things that we have to go through. And I tell you what, it is a little, sometimes I feel like I shouldn't have to explain, like, look, he's got autism. It's pretty evident, it's pretty
Yeah. Catch 22 Shakespeare as it
it
ticks. So.
it is a catch 22.
No, yeah,
um
those are ticks. Yeah.
that's and I'm really glad that you can laugh through this and have a good
Mm,
time and kind of normalize it a little bit, because like
hmm.
I would love for you to just go out in public and just hang out. Like, people really, like, I'm almost
I'm a
40, and if I saw you out in public, having ticks like that, I would understand. I would know what's going on,
I'm a
you
cat.
know, and I would I would uh I would like people just to, instead of staring, ask questions, or instead of being upset, have a little bit of empathy and understanding, because we're all people, and we all should be able to go outside and hang out and feel comfortable without people staring. But
Hmm.
that's just the some of the things that I go through, and it's I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me and trying to give me a better understanding of what you go through. And it's not all that much different from what I go through with my kids, and some of the things that I have, like ADHD and
Catch 22
anxiety. And
Shakespeare.
um
Yeah.
I've never been in the military though. So what was that like? Were you 18 when you went in?
Yeah, I joined right out of high school. Yep.
So what was basic training like for the Navy?
Guys, you know what? It's so boring. Yeah, no, people think boot camp is like this exciting time where you're learning how to fight and learning how to, be a soldier of some sort, or in my case, being a sailor. I actually, this is not a joke. I missed that day, the sailor part, the actual sailing ship, working on a ship. I missed that day because I was in the hospital because there's this thing called like boot camp disease, and it's like daycare, where you have like if you took kids from all over the country and you put them in a daycare together, and like what kind of illnesses would pop up because of that. That's what happens. So boot camp, like you're exposed to all these different kinds and suddenly Like almost everybody goes through it at some point. It hit me quite hard, and I had to go to the hospital because I was passing out and stuff. So they, but it's otherwise it is so boring. It is so utterly boring. You're not talking. You're not allowed to talk really. Um, you know,
So how long is basic? Is it like 6 to 8
it's
weeks?
it's 8 weeks. Yeah, and then depending on your job, you go to another kind of boot camp, which is like when you're training to be for combat, like in the Marines with the Marines, like you're going. That's another like 12 weeks, I think, and it's basically like it's very similar to boot camp. I've heard, um, but it's there's a lot more to it, obviously. Uh, but otherwise, you're just like going from classroom to classroom and learning. Non, I mean, oh gosh,
So
it
it's
is so
basically
boring.
just like a continuation of high school with a little bit of training mixed in.
Yeah, and they can yell at well, they could. I don't think they can yell at you anymore. They used to be able to oh, man, the stuff that I heard, I'm gonna call them drill sergeants for the purpose of the show. But yeah, the stuff that I heard the drill sergeants say to, like, some of my, uh, comrades, there was, some of the, guys that I was, with in boot camp was horrible. Like, it was honestly some of the meanest stuff I've ever heard anyone say to another person. I'm Yeah, and then you could not get away with that today. Like, the stuff that they said back then, holy moly, it's like is offensive on so many levels. Yeah,
So
so,
you move through basic after 8 weeks
uh
and you get your MOS. What are you doing for the Navy?
I was a Navy corpsman, so I was a medic.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and that was 12, 16 weeks, something. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But it was longer than boot camp. It was longer than boot camp for sure. Uh, and it was a lot more serious. Because they were like because the Marines don't have their own medics. They get them from the Navy. Most people don't know that actually, and the Marines are actually a department of the Navy.
Yeah,
They're part of the Navy. The Marines are part of the Navy. So, yeah. So anyway, it's yeah.
that's
So I
pretty
was a medic. Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. Medics have a very, very important job in
Oh yeah.
the armed services, and they're one of the soldiers that don't get too much. They nobody messes with them. The other side, they it's a war crime to mess with medics. So,
Oh
um,
yeah. Well, I don't think we've been in a war where they respected that since World War II.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
And if something happens, who are they going to tell? Like what's going to
Yeah.
happen? You know,
What authority?
it's oh,
What
you got
authority
one
you
of
gotta go
ours,
to?
we'll get one of yours. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so you, as you're 19, you're coming out of the military, and you've got your diagnosis.
I was
Do
20 actually when I left.
and you said you got your diagnosis when you were 27, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 20, you're exiting the military.
Mhm.
Do you know what's next, or you got to figure that out as you're going?
I knew that I started writing while I was in the Navy, and just experimenting with words, and so I didn't really know what I was going to do, other than I knew that I wanted to write, and I won my first short story and poetry contests while going to my first college. They did an annual creative writing contest, and I won first place in both categories, for the oldest, uh, you know, because the age group. Yeah, and so that was really a boon. That really helped to like narrow down what my interests were, which was doing the writing. And so yeah, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I needed to be far better at it than I was. Yeah,
I hear you. I hear you.
yeah,
It's kind of like the podcast, man. Like I've been doing this for almost 11 months now, and it's from from day one. We go back all the way and listen to my first podcast. It's disastrous. But like this one here, it's I've had a great time. This has been a great conversation.
Mhm,
I actually think this is probably a pretty good place to leave this. Do
mhm.
you have any more? So, are you working on a volume 4 of the Second Son?
I am. This is the first one. The first volumes 1 and 2. Uh, and this is volume 3.
I like the cover on that one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love them too. And I'm working on volume 4. I'm about 10,000 words away from. It's going to be it's about as long as The Hobbit is. It's not, but
Wow.
I'm not. It's not done yet. It won't be done in 10,000 words because I'm doubling. I'm about to double the length of The Hobbit, just about. Just to give people, because a lot of people have read The Hobbit, so I figured that's a helpful metric.
And all your stuff can be found on Amazon. The Second
Yep.
Son Volume 1 and Volume 2 is in the same book. The Second Son Volume 3, and those two books are already on Amazon and also
Hmm.
through your website, kristofmorrow.com.
Hmm.
And so when do you expect the fourth one, Volume 4, to be completed?
Next year,
Okay,
it'll
and
be published
so
next year. Yeah.
that's awesome, man. That's wow. That's I can't even, like, you held up that book, the first one, and it's pretty thick. And then the second one is just as thick. And I'm
Uh,
like, I can't imagine, I couldn't even imagine writing the first one, let alone
it's
a volume
yeah.
2 and then a volume 3. So man, I am very, very proud of you
Uh,
for the things that you've accomplished thus far. Um, it's amazing to you did not let your disabilities, quote unquote, you didn't let your disabilities hinder you, and you
yeah.
didn't let them slow you down. If anything, you used your disabilities as fuel to
Yeah.
to fuel that fire and get these books done. And I mean, essentially going through, like, you were dealing with symptoms of your Tourette's from age 19 to 27 without a diagnosis, and going through all that stuff. And I know how I feel about my ADHD, my anxiety, and the stuff, the trials and tribulations that you went through your 20s, and you're
Hmm.
here in your 30s writing books and shit. It's incredible, man. It's awesome. I
Um,
appreciate you hanging out with me. It's been about an hour, and I this conversation couldn't have gone better, and I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with
wow.
me.
You're very kind. I really appreciate. I treasure your trust, and it means a lot to me that you would say
I'll tell
that.
you what, next year when volume 4, I'm going to be keeping an eye on you, and I'm going to Amazon, and I'm going to buy volume 1 and volume 2, probably this afternoon, and I'm going to read those, and then I'm going to read volume 3. And then by the time I
Oh,
get done with those, you should be somewhere close to knowing when the date will be for volume 4, and I'll reach back out with you and we'll have another conversation.
I would love that. Hmm.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And this has been a killer conversation, man. It's
Hmm.
very, very it's not that often that I run into people that can speak this open and honestly within the first hour of meeting them. And I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you, man. That means a great deal to me. Truly, I I'm very yeah. You flatter me. You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank You're welcome, man. And I'm gonna well, for I don't even know what to say at this point, you know. So we'll go ahead and bring the show to an end, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.